Number 1. Karen Carpenter. She drank poison every single day just to fit into a dress. The world called her an angel. The media called her chubby. But behind closed doors, she was slowly dissolving her own heart just to survive the spotlight. Fame didn't save her, it starved her. Welcome to the darkest corner of the music industry. We see the glamour, the awards, and the smiles, but we rarely see the demons living in the dressing room. Today, we're investigating 10 horrifying pop star suicides that expose the rot inside the business. From the perfect girl who refused to eat to the sex god who hanged himself in a hotel, these are the stories they didn't want you to know. If you are brave enough to face the dark truth of music history, hit that subscribe button right now. Join us in our investigation, and let's make sure these legends are never forgotten. In the glittering, noisy history of American pop music, there has never been a voice quite like Karen Carpenter's. Sound engineers and producers called it liquid gold. It was flawless. It was deep. It was hauntingly beautiful.
He would never be free when I was
Throughout the 1970s, Karen was the ultimate symbol of innocence. She was the girl next door who sang weddings, sunny days, and falling in love. As one half of the Carpenters, she sold over 100 million records, dominating the global charts even while the loud guitars of rock and roll were screaming in the background. But while the world saw a smiling pop princess in colorful outfits playing the drums with joy, they had no idea of the tragedy unfolding behind the microphone. They didn't know that she was slowly disappearing right in front of their eyes. To understand Karen's descent into darkness, you have to look at the pressure cooker she lived in. Karen never actually wanted to be the frontwoman. She considered herself a drummer who could sing. She felt safe behind the drum kit. It was her shield, protecting her from the scrutiny of the audience. But her voice was too valuable to be hidden. The executives at A&M Records forced her out from behind the drums and pushed her to the center of the stage. They took away her shield. Suddenly, she wasn't just a musician anymore, she was a product. And products in the pop world are judged by one thing above all else: how they look. In 1973, a single sentence in a concert review shattered her reality. A music critic, a man who likely forgot his words the moment he wrote them, referred to Karen as Richard's chubby sister. She wasn't chubby, she was healthy. She was normal. But in the twisted, superficial world of pop stardom, normal is considered fat. That one word broke her psyche. She looked in the mirror and didn't see a Grammy-winning legend, she saw a failure. I want to ask you something honest. Can a single insult from a stranger destroy your entire self-image? Tell me your thoughts in the comments. That one word planted a seed of destruction. She decided to take control of the one thing she could: her weight. It started innocently enough, a diet here, a skipped meal there, but soon it spiraled into a darkness that had no name in the 1970s. The world didn't know what anorexia nervosa was. Doctors dismissed it as a phase. Her family, who managed her career tightly, dismissed it as work stress. But Karen was fighting a war in her mind. She began to view food as the enemy. By 1975, the transformation was horrifying to those who paid attention. The fans in the front row began to gasp when she walked on stage. Her clothes hung off her frame like drapes on a skeleton. She had dropped from a healthy 120 pounds to a terrifying 80 pounds. Yet the machine didn't stop. The tour dates kept coming. The TV specials kept filming. The industry saw a dying woman and told her to smile and sing "Top of the World." Karen developed extreme methods to hide her starvation. She wore layers of sweaters to hide her protruding bones. She pushed food around her plate to trick her family. But here is the terrifying twist. Her most deadly weapon wasn't starvation alone. It was a bottle found in almost every pharmacy called Ipecac syrup. It is a poison designed to induce vomiting in emergencies. It is meant to be used once to save a life. Karen was using it daily. She was drinking poison to purge whatever little food she forced herself to eat. What she didn't know, and what the doctors discovered too late, was that Ipecac doesn't just make you sick, it slowly dissolves the muscles of the heart. Every time she took it, she was weakening the engine that kept her alive. She was committing a slow-motion suicide, destroying her heart fiber by heart fiber, all to remain thin enough for the cameras. By the early 80s, Karen realized she was in trouble. She admitted she needed help. She went into therapy. She started gaining a little weight back. It seemed like the pop princess was going to survive. On February 3, 1983, she was planning her future. She went shopping for a new washer and dryer. She called her friends. She seemed hopeful, but the damage was already done. On February 4, 1983, Karen collapsed in the closet of her parents' home in Downey, California. Her mother found her lying on the floor unresponsive. The paramedics arrived, but the liquid gold voice was silent. At the hospital, the doctors were stunned. Her heart, ravaged by years of starvation and chemical poisoning, had simply stopped beating. It gave up. She was only 32 years old. The coroner's report was a wake-up call to the world. It listed the cause of death as heart failure due to anorexia nervosa. It was the first time many people had ever heard that word. Karen Carpenter didn't just die, she exposed a monster. Her death forced the world to admit that the media's obsession with thinness was lethal. So, tell me below, is the media responsible for her death because they called her fat? Type yes or no. When you listen to her sing Rainy Days and Mondays now, you aren't just hearing a pop song, you are hearing a cry of a woman starving in a world of abundance. She had fame, fortune, and adoration, but she didn't have the permission to be herself. The industry that killed her instantly turned her into a saint the moment she died. But if you think the pressure of fame only affects the quiet ones, you are wrong. Our next story takes us from the quiet suburbs of California to the rock and roll hotels of Australia. It involves a sex god who had everything, money, women, and fame, but was found hanging in a room full of secrets. Was it a sex game gone wrong, or something much darker?
Number 2. Michael Hutchence. If Karen Carpenter was the sound of innocent Sunday mornings, our next legend was the absolute definition of a dangerous Saturday night. In the late 1980s and early 90s, there was no man on earth more charismatic, more magnetic, or more envied than Michael Hutchence. As the lead singer of the Australian band INXS, he was the ultimate rock god. He had the swagger of Mick Jagger and the voice of a bluesman. He dated supermodels, he lived in castles in France, and he held the entire world in the palm of his hand with hits like Need You Tonight and Never Tear Us Apart. To the public, Michael Hutchence was a man who had won the lottery of life. He was the wild boy of pop rock, living a life of endless pleasure. But behind the leather pants, the messy hair, and the platinum records, Michael was hiding a secret. Catastrophic injury that was slowly destroying his mind from the inside out. Most people believe that Michael's death was just another cliché of a rock star partying too hard. But the seeds of his destruction were sown years earlier, on a cold night in Copenhagen in 1992. It is a story that turns his death from a scandal into a tragedy. Michael was out with his girlfriend, supermodel Helena Christensen, when he got into a trivial argument with a taxi driver. It was over something as small as a slice of pizza. The driver became aggressive and punched Michael. It was a single blow, but it caused Michael to fall backward and hit his head with sickening force on the concrete curb. He suffered a fractured skull and permanent brain damage. When he woke up in the hospital, the Michael Hutchence the world knew was gone. The injury robbed him of two senses that make life worth living, his sense of smell and his sense of taste. Gone. Forever. Imagine being a man who loved food, wine, and the sensory pleasures of life, and suddenly the world becomes flavorless and odorless. Imagine kissing the person you love and smelling nothing. Imagine eating your favorite meal and tasting only cardboard. It was a torture that drove him into a deep, aggressive depression. I want to ask you a question about this. Do you believe a physical injury to the brain can completely change a person's soul? Tell me what you think in the comments. Friends and bandmates noticed the change immediately. The sweet, charming, easygoing boy became volatile. He would fly into rages. He would weep for no reason. He started pushing people away. To cope with the silence in his head and the pain in his soul, he turned to drugs and alcohol, not for fun, but for survival. He was self-medicating a broken brain. By 1997, Michael was a man on the edge. INXS was no longer the biggest band in the world. They were struggling to stay relevant in the age of grunge. Michael felt like a fading star. On top of that, his personal life had become a tabloid war zone. He was in a vicious public relationship with British TV presenter Paula Yates, and they were embroiled in a toxic custody battle with her ex-husband Bob Geldof. Michael was being hunted by the paparazzi every single day. He was trapped. On November 22, 1997, INXS was in Sydney preparing for a homecoming tour that was supposed to celebrate their 20th anniversary. Michael was staying in room 524 of the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in Double Bay. He was 37 years old. That night, Michael was alone. He had expected Paula and their baby daughter, Tiger Lily, to fly out to join him, but he received a phone call saying they weren't coming because of the legal battle. This was the breaking point. Phone records show that Michael made a series of frantic, desperate calls that night. He called his manager and left a voicemail saying, "I've had enough." He called Bob Geldof and screamed at him down the phone. He called his ex-girlfriend seeking comfort. He was a man drowning in isolation, crying out for a lifeline, but nobody arrived in time to pull him out. Why do you think he called so many people, yet no one arrived in time to save him? Was it bad luck or negligence? Let me know your theory. The next morning, a maid knocked on the door of room 524. There was no answer. When she entered, she didn't find a sleeping rock star surrounded by empty bottles. She found a tragedy. Michael Hutchence was found naked, kneeling on the floor, facing the door. He had taken a snakeskin belt and tightened it around his neck, effectively strangling himself. He had checked out of the hotel of life because he simply couldn't stand the noise anymore. But the horror didn't end with his death. The media, hungry for a scandal to sell newspapers, immediately spread the rumor that this was an autoerotic accident, a sex game gone wrong. It was a cruel lie that persisted for years. It sold tabloids, but it stripped Michael of his dignity. The coroner's report told a sadder, simpler truth. There was no game. This was a suicide. This was a man who had lost his battle with a damaged brain and a broken heart. Michael spent his life being the center of attention, but he died alone in a cold hotel room, proving that you can be loved by millions, but if you don't love yourself, the applause means nothing. Do you think the media should be held accountable for spreading lies about the dead just to sell papers? Let me know your verdict. But if you think the rock star lifestyle is dangerous, wait until you hear about the modern music machine. Our next story moves from the 90s to the present day. It involves a shy boy who became the biggest DJ in the world, a man who generated millions of dollars but was so overworked that he used a piece of broken glass to escape his contract forever. Did the industry work him to death?